Hi, and welcome to my presentation on the mummification in ancient Egypt. If you need additional information, please consult your textbook on somewhere between pages 92 and 93, where it covers religion and Egyptian life. And also, if you look at pages 94 and 95, it talks about pyramids, and pyramids and mummification and religion are all related. So let's get started. Many times people are just amazed and are totally enthralled with Egypt because of what they left behind. They had a very complex religious belief system that was polytheistic. They believed in many different gods and goddesses, and they also believed in what we call an afterlife. An afterlife is a belief that after you die, your soul and your body will go someplace else. And the Egyptians believed that, and that is why they had to preserve the body. They wanted to preserve the body for the next life. Um, and this is right here is a picture of a mummy, or actually, it's a mummified body that was exposed, so you can see what it actually looks like after thousands of years. To the right, you'll see a sarcophagus, which is a human-shaped coffin. Egyptians believed that the soul had two parts: the Ba, which is the personality. It could leave the body and needed to recognize it to get back. And the Ka, which is the life force. It stayed with the body but needed food and water to survive. So the Egyptians believed that they had to preserve the body. And originally, in the earliest mummies were actually buried in the sand because it would automatically dry out the body. But this wasn't always reliable. They never knew exactly how the body would, whether or not it would decay or if it would preserve properly. So Egyptians developed a better method of preserving a body after death, and to ensure that the body and the soul would get to the next world. So step one, priests laid the body out on a table and began to remove the organs. Okay, they believed that thoughts came from your heart, so the brain was like useless. So they would remove the brain through the nose, usually with a hook. The heart was left inside the mummy. Other organs were stored in canopic jars. Things like the stomach, the liver, the intestines, the lungs. They were taken out and they were preserved inside these jars. They're called canopic jars. And these are the sons of Horus. That's what each one of those represents. Then step two, the body was washed in palm wine and then covered in natron to dry out for 40 days. Natron is a natural salt that you can actually get from the ocean or from the sea. So they actually would cover the body with this palm wine, which would keep the skin elastic, and then they would dry out the skin with the salt for 40 days. Step three, the body was then covered in liquid resin and packed with linen and sawdust, and then wrapped in linen bandages. Okay, you can see here they're wrapping the mummy. All right, they're wrapping the body with these linen strips. Now you can see here that they're all they seem to be taking part in this process, and this right here is where the four canopic jars will be stored. Now, as they wrap the body, they would place amulets or special stones or special different little statues or figures inside the bandages, and they actually did represent different things that would help protect the body. Like, for example, the heart scarab, which is placed over the heart for health, the Ankh, okay, which meant for long eternal life. Almost looks like a cross here, but it's the Egyptian version. The Jed pillar for strength, the Eye of Horus for restoring health. They placed that over the cut where they opened up the body to get the organs. Finally, an onion was put in the mummy's hand, and that was for health. The wrapping took about 15 days. It was a very serious and sacred process. Step four, they would place a mask on the mummy. It had to look like the person so that the Ba could come back and recognize that person and get back into that body. The entire embalming process, which means embalming means preserving the body, took about 70 days. Step six, the mummy was then placed in a decorated coffin also known as a sarcophagus. It's a human-shaped coffin, as you can see here. Pharaohs and other important mummies were placed in sarcophagus. Not everyone was, only the important, powerful people. And here's a short video. Or not. Hold on. Here it is. Sorry about that.
Ancient Egyptians believed that once you died, your soul would live on, but to live on properly, it needed to be able to reanimate your body in the form of your body or statues and paintings. This is why mummification was so important, so that your body would be preserved and your soul would have a house for the hereafter. Mummification was carried out by special priests and embalmers who would work on the body, and some of them had very specialized jobs, the ones who made the cuts or the ones who were doing the bandaging, but it was quite a large brotherhood of priests and workers. The first thing that one did for mummification, classic mummification, was to remove the brain, and this was done by inserting a very sharp object up the nostril, hitting it so that it would break in through the ethmoid bone and into the cranium. Then they'd poke round and be able to make the brain to mush, and then they'd remove the brain by teasing it out with a hooked instrument through the nostrils and sort of patting the head violently till the brain came out. Then they'd sort of pour liquid resin into the brain cavity, because this is what would prevent any bacteria from growing. Once the brain had been disposed of, the body would be cut here. There'd be a small cut on the left-hand side, and the embalmers would remove the lungs, the liver, the stomach, and the intestines. The heart would be left in place, because for the ancient Egyptians, the heart was the most important organ. That's where your soul resided. This is where everything that had to do with you as a being was. The body then was wrapped after it was being oiled and unguents were applied so it would smell nice. Then it was wrapped up in bandages with amulets placed for protection throughout, and then it was put into a coffin and buried. You can really compare mummies to beef jerky, and in fact, when the pharaohs came back from Luxor to Cairo once they'd been discovered, they were greeted all the way down the Nile with great applause. But when they got to the port of Bulag, they had to be taxed, and in fact, instead of beef jerky, they came in as salted fish, because it was the same thing, preserved meat.
Interesting. All right. Let me jump back real quick. And all right. Finally, according to the Egyptian religion, after the soul would leave this earth and go into the next world, there was the opening of the mouth ceremony, which is where they would more or less welcome the soul in, and this is part of the funeral. And it says here, "You live again, you revive always. You have become young again. You are young again and forever." Right. So step 8 was the weighing of the heart, according to the religion. In the afterlife, they would take your heart and they would put it upon a scale and weigh it against a feather. Now, if your heart was a good heart, your heart was light, and it was lighter than a feather. And if you've done good deeds, your heart was a light heart. But if you've done bad things, your heart would be heavy, according to the Egyptians. And if that happens, you are not allowed into the underworld or into the next world. So this here shows you the mummy's heart being weighed against a feather, the feather of truth. And you can see they're documenting what happened. And this right here is this horrible monster that would come out and eat your heart and eat you if your heart was heavy. If the heart was balanced, the mummy lived forever in the afterlife. If it didn't, it was devoured by the monster god Amut. Fun fact, mummies were ground up and eaten in the Middle Ages because they believed it would act as medicine. Yuck. Animals were also mummified too, and of course the cat was considered to be almost like a god in some respects. You can see here there's different pets that were mummified. All right, cool. Well, guys, good luck, and hopefully you learned something. Remember, check out your textbook and the other websites. Take care.